This is Dust for Dust to Dawn Gaming with our deck tech and wrap up with Blue Moon in Modern. So, Blue Moon is an archetype that has been around, usually focuses on Blood Moon and being a blue-red control deck with a ton of islands to be able to cast Cryptic Command. Often also runs Vedalken Shackles as a way to control what's going on the board. Vedalken Shackles is definitely a consideration. I don't think I've seen any one particular way to build this deck. There's a couple different builds. There's the more traditional, like Batter Skull, Vedalken Shackles builds I've seen. I've seen more tempo versions in the forums with like Cryptic Serpent and Thought Scour and such. I don't think that was really what I was aiming for here. This is a more semi-traditional list, I guess, with the exception of the 3 Madcap, 2 Platinum Imperium in the main. This is, like I said, a blue-red control deck. You've got things like Remand, Bolt, Cryptic Command, Snapcasters, Electrolyzes, Izzet Charms, Ancestral Visions, just your typical good stuff. Blue-red deck, something you'd see out of Grixis Control. As far as the oddball choices of the deck, the Madcap Experiment Platinum Imperion particular package is for decks that can't deal with it in the main deck. Like decks that don't have Terminate, decks that don't have Path to Exile, Kullagan's Command. Now those decks are obviously few and far between. The main things that this hits are things like Burn and Affinity in Game 1. It's possible to get like a Madcap Experiment down and then play a Blood Moon, and your Affinity opponent basically can't kill you unless they have like double Galv Blast, if you're careful about how you play your Platinum Imperion. That's the thought process. Now obviously, post-board games, there's a lot of Artifact Hate, By Force, Ancient Grudge, Shatterstorm. So if you show your opponent this particular package, the sideboard has a plan for getting around that, which we'll get to in a minute. The other weird ofs is Dismember. One of the problems a blue-red deck has is tough creatures with toughness 4 or greater. One of Dismember allows you to answer things like Gurmag Angler, Tasker, Siege Rhino, things of that ilk. Another one is another one of Harvest Pyre, which you remove X cards from your library. It does X damage to target creature. This is mainly for the late game when you're trying to answer things like Death Shadow and the aforementioned 4 and 5 toughness creatures. The only other weird inclusion is Grove of the Burnwillows. Now, Grove looks a little weird in a blue-red control deck, especially when we have absolutely no green cards. The sole reason Grove of the Burnwillows is in this deck is to help the Death Shadow matchup, which probably is not great. We did manage to beat it in the league that we just played in our first match, but it was a very close matchup. Beyond that, you've got your plethora of islands, your fetch lands to get your islands, and some number of steam vents, and a desolate lighthouse for those matchups where Blood Moon isn't good, or you don't draw Blood Moon and you need card selection. That's it for the main deck. Like I said, you got your ways you win. You got your Snapcasters, your Vendilion Clicks, and your Platinum Imperions. Onto the sideboard. So before we get too far into the deck, another Dismember, another card to answer things like Tasker and that ilk of cards. Don't want to play too many of those. 4 life loss is huge, but you do need answers to creatures like a quick Tasker or Gurmag Angler. Ceremonious Rejections are for decks they've been popping up for: Affinity, Eldrazi, Tron, and Tron. Negates are for control decks with a lot of non-creature permanents like Burn, decks heavy in Planeswalkers, other control decks. Dispels, mainly for Counter Wars and Burn, which is not the greatest matchup in the world. Anger of the Gods for the Collected Company decks, the small creature decks. bringing it against Affinity, Collected Company, Elves, any of that ilk of deck. Finally, the Things on the Ice and the Enigma Drakes are a little weird. Thing on the Ice is good against creature-heavy decks if they're boarding out a lot of their removal. Can often play a bunch of quick spells, get a quick clock on the table. Something you can bring in against Death Shadow in a pinch. Sometimes they board out most of their removal if they see Snaps and Vendilions. Bring in like their Artifact Hate for Madcap Experiment. Sometimes you can just get them with a flip, wipe their board, dome them for 7 game. Enigma Drake is your backup threat when you need to close out games quickly, and your opponent has seen the Madcap Experiment Platinum Imperium package. Enigma Drake is a gamble because its power is based on the size of your graveyard, how many instants and sorceries in your graveyard. So if your opponent's bringing in things like Rest in Peace or Relic of Progenitus, Enigma Drake isn't necessarily the best backup plan, but you've got to have something to board out the Madcap Experiment Platinum Imperium plan. And this also allows you to take the aggressive role when you're on the play in certain matchups, when maybe you're in the control mirror and your opponent's holding up like negates or something to tag your Blood Moon and you drop an Enigma Drake. Maybe they've removed their pass or don't have an answer in hand. This creature can close out the game fairly quickly in combination with the Bolts, Electrolyzes, Snapcaster Mages, Vendilion clicks. I don't know how good this particular plan is. It has seemed fine so far, but I've only played 5 matches and I built this deck from scratch. I looked at a lot of Blue Moon decks. There really is no consensus best build for the deck, so this was my attempt at a build. I might tweak it or play the more traditional non-Madcap Experiment Platinum Imperium version next time. We'll see. As far as the matchups, we ended up playing Death Shadow. We won. Played 2 Titan Shift decks, which have a rough time with Blood Moon. We were able to keep them off balance long enough to usually land Blood Moon to finish them off. The 4th round, we played a very close matchup against Burn. Platinum Imperium was great in the matchup. However, our opponent did bring in cards like Smash to Smithereens to answer it. So once they saw it once, they saw it once in game 1, they were able to bring in a card to answer it in game 2, and then game 3, I don't remember exactly how it went, but they were all close games. Round 5, we played against Red-White Emeria with an Emrakul Nahiri package, pretty much. Blood Moon was pretty good against them. The game 1 was a long grind. Game 2, we would have won game 2, but our opponent was packing Boil. Card that doesn't see much play in Modern. I'm not sure it's even that good in Modern right now, but it got us. In game 3, we just didn't draw the right portion of our deck to answer multiple Nahiris. We were able to answer one Nahiri, they got a second Nahiri down, they were threatening to ultimate it, and they just kind of snowballed, and we didn't have any of our Ancestral Visions or Cryptic Commands kind of stuff to kind of keep us in the game. So far, both Blood Moon decks have performed well, even in matchups where Blood Moon isn't necessarily the greatest. Keeping track of our Blood Moon count, against the 2 Titan Shift decks, it was excellent. Against Grixis Shadow, when we landed it, it was pretty good. Forced them to fetch their non-basics, or forced them to fetch their basics. They couldn't deal as much damage themselves. Burn, it was fine. Emeria, it shut down part of their recursion plan in the games we saw it. So in this particular league, Blood Moon was very powerful. Seemed like something we maybe want to be doing in the format, but we will cycle back to Scred. I know a lot of you like to see Scred out there, so we'll be playing Scred. And then we'll cycle back for at least one more league each of Ponza, Blue Moon, and Scred. This has been Dusk for Dust to Dusk Gaming. Dust to Dawn Gaming. We'll be back here in a bit with other matches.